Welcome back to the Law of Attraction Epilogue series, episode 5. So far in this series, we've been talking mostly about the foundational principles of manifestation. And so in today's episode, I'd like to start getting into the mechanics of creation, starting off with what I believe is the most important mechanical aspect of manifestation, and one that goes almost completely overlooked by the average person. And that is, of course, the power of imagination. Imagination is commonly thought of as something that's only for children and totally irrelevant and unnecessary for adults. Yet at the same time, most people spend hours out of their day imagining their life the way that they wish it would go and the ways they're afraid that it might go. And so what I would like to bring your attention to is the fact that imagination is not inconsequential. It is not a free pass. In fact, imagination is the driving force of creation. You will always get the things that you consistently imagine, because imagination is the engine of creation. Imagination is the immediacy of consciousness. It is the force with which we create our lives. And so whether or not you've realized it, you have always been doing this. You have always been creating your life with imagination. If that sounds scary, it shouldn't. Because when we accept this to be true and we begin to understand what imagination is, then we can easily begin to use it the way it was intended to be used, which is, of course, to create exactly the life experience that we desire to have. So let's quickly talk about what imagination is and how we can begin to use it for our benefit. The only true limitation that exists is what we can imagine. You always experience the world as you imagine it to be, never as it actually is. You will only ever see what fits into your belief system. So if you want to expand your life, you have to first expand your belief in what is possible. In short, you must expand your imagination. We've grown up hearing the phrase that seeing is believing, but that is actually not the case at all. The reverse is actually the case. You only see what you believe already. And most people live inside of their own bubble world, their own reference frame that is always reinforcing itself. And so seeing is just a reflection of your deepest convictions. Most people are completely incapable of seeing any point of view that runs counter to their current belief system, because they simply cannot expand their imagination about what is possible. And so in that way you see the world and your life is just a reflection of your deepest conviction about what is possible. People tend to only perceive what they already believe to be true, and never anything that runs outside of those belief systems. And that's because they're essentially dead to their own imagination. They don't live from a state of imagining what is possible. They only live from a state of constantly reinforcing their current life circumstances, and therefore recreating them again and again. People hold such dense and limiting beliefs and rigid ways of seeing that they are literally incapable of contacting anything outside of that belief system. And so because of this, the only things that they can attract are circumstances which fit into those beliefs. So for example, a person who is poor usually continues being poor because they hold the deep conviction that wealth is unattainable. They actually believe that they are poor. But the only reason they're poor to begin with is because they hold the belief that wealth is unattainable. And so the law of attraction, being always fair and just, simply gives them the reality they believe in. But the law of attraction does not care what's in your bank account. It only cares what you believe to be true. And so we have to be able to step out of our current circumstances and to begin to see the realities that we want to experience. And we do that with the power of imagination. In simple terms, imagination is consciousness. It is the act of consciousness tuning into a TV station of a possible experience that is available to it. Imagination is the vehicle that allows us to travel into the field of dreams and begin shopping around for experiences that we would like to have. And so what consciousness essentially is a field of possibility. And so when consciousness wants to generate any experience, it must first begin to vibrate within itself. And this vibration is seen as what we call imagination, but it is no less real than what we're experiencing right now. It's just vibration at a much higher frequency level. And so it appears from the vantage point of this density level to be much more ethereal. And so our minds jump in and claim it to be not real. But there is no such thing as real and not real. There is only vibration on a spectrum of density. There is no boundary line where imagination stops and reality begins. And so if you can truly imagine it, it's because it is possible. And so now let's talk about what it means to truly imagine something. Now, I've done a video on this topic already called Time Does Not Exist, which I'll link here above in case you would like a more detailed breakdown on this concept. But what you need to know for this video is simply that there is no actual thing called time from the universe's perspective. The universe does not perceive itself from a sequence of events format. Time is merely the reflection of how we view the universe through the lens of duality. So when we're manifesting, it is important to remember that the universe does not regard time as an obstacle. From a non-dual lens, everything exists simultaneously and has always existed. And so because this limited filter that we call our mind is not capable of perceiving true simultaneity, then we feel as though we're living in a time-bound world of cause and effect. But in truth, we are simply shifting through parallel realities every nanosecond, which have always existed with our imagination. We never actually travel through time, we travel through parallel realities which always exist. Like pictures on a movie strip, you are always choosing the next frame that appears on your timeline based upon your deepest convictions and intentions. Every possible reality, every possible configuration of energy exists simultaneously, and you choose which timeline you travel down with your imagination, with whatever you are most deeply convicted is going to happen in your experience. So imagination is not just seeing the picture, but it is feeling the experience. Until you get emotionally involved with it, you are not truly imagining it. But if you can see it in your mind and feel it in your heart, that is because it is a possible experience that you can have. So for example, you can imagine being a wealthy business owner, but if you do not also feel the joy and excitement that that image brings you, then you are not yet attracting it. And that is because thoughts select, but feelings pull the trigger. And imagination is only both. They are the two ingredients for manifestation, and you cannot have one without the other. For example, I cannot imagine turning into a green elephant right now. There is absolutely nothing about that idea that excites me, because you cannot become genuinely excited about something that is outside your field of possibility. Therefore, your excitement for it is what qualifies you to have it. Joy and excitement are the signal from the Holy Spirit or higher self that what you are seeing is possible for you to have. And here's the key point. The more excited you are about it, the more ecstatic the vision makes you, the more possible that it is. Remember from last week's episode, your desire and intention is what narrows the probability field. Because when you imagine something, you are literally remote viewing a parallel reality. You're sort of peeking through a foggy window into a potential timeline that coexists with the one that you're currently in. But if you were able to imagine it in absolute perfect detail, in its complete density and full 3D Technicolor, you would actually be in that reality. But our brains act as a filter for consciousness, and although our brains are an incredible design of evolution, they are nowhere near capable of unlocking the full power of imagination, because imagination is limitless. But with that being said, we are capable of so much more than we realize, and the amount of imagination that we can unlock is more than enough to create our realities with. So understand that what you see and feel when you imagine something is absolutely real and available to you. So here's the final takeaway. The mechanics of this truth are very easy. Follow the path of your joy. Follow whatever resonates with your imagination the most. Because everything that exists in our world today was built through somebody's imagination. Your life as it is today has been built through your imagination. When we were kids, We lived with the visceral sense that anything was possible. We woke up every morning feeling excited about the possibilities, ready to go create our day exactly the way we wanted it to be. But somewhere along the lines, we lost that innate knowing that we are in control of our lives and dictate our own destiny. We slowly began to believe that we are victims of our life, and that imagination is only for children and not for sensible adults. But meanwhile, we're constantly daydreaming about the things that could go wrong in our lives and fantasizing about what kind of life we wish we could live if it were actually up to us. But in utilizing the power of our imagination, the destiny of our life is indeed up to us. So what I propose to you is to take your power back by taking your imagination back. Create the life that you want by simply following your joy. Because joy is the only way to deliberately manifest anything, because it always leads us to the right steps through inspired action. Joy is simply the absence of holding any incorrect points of view about reality. Imagination allows us to step into a parallel reality and place a demand on it with our emotions. And so without imagination, we could not create the life we want and would have to settle for being victims of circumstance. But through our imagination, we have the power to intend and create what it is that we want. And so, as I often say, you are consciousness, which means that you are imagination. You are only limited by what you can imagine. So simply imagine the most exciting possible thing and then take action on it. Whatever you can do in this moment that excites you the most and that is most relevant to the theme that you want to experience. Because every time that you act upon your joy, you are acting in alignment. And that, my friends, is where the leverage is.